Hello, everyone. This is Tristikov, or Tristan, whichever you know me as. And I just wanted to share a little bit of stuff about my second issue of Avania. If you're watching this for the first time, this comic is something I've worked on for a number of years, and you can read all of it up until the latest pages on worldofavania.com. Link will be in the description. And you can also buy the physical issues on IndyPlanet, and you can download full digital issues on ComiXology. Again, the links for that will be in the description. So I'm just gonna show you a little bit about this and talk about some of the creation process. So this is the second issue, and similar concept for the cover as the first, just showing off the main cast. They start the story in separate viewpoints. So my first two issues, the concept was sort of the old movie poster collage shot, rather than focusing on just one aspect of the story because it has multiple viewpoints. So this sort of reflects a little bit of what they're doing and who's present in this issue, but put all together in I forget what the term is for it. It's not a literal representation of what happens, but anyway. So this issue, you'll notice it is grayscale interiors, black and white printing, but the covers are full color. So you have a pinup of Mayfair and Morsley here. And this was where I started spending some time doing a pretty detailed drawing for the inside covers, and that I think makes up a little bit for not having a color interior. I did this specifically because grayscale printing is cheaper and it's a little faster to produce. Picking all the colors takes a long time, and I'm admittedly not the best colorist, so I wanted to streamline that as best I can. However, I did take quite a while to kind of figure out how much detail I wanted to put into the grayscale, and you'll notice in this issue, the earlier issues versus the current pages on the webcomic, that the grayscale is a little simpler. I just dumped a whole gradient across and then erased or added a certain level of opacity to make Laguna's tail and hooves darker, and Charlotte's tank top is darker, and then erased to make Laguna's tank top lighter. And later on I did more with actual directional lighting and stuff, but right now it's mainly just changing the values so that it stands out a little more. I did try having just plain ink, and given my detailed preference for line art, it didn't look that good. Or it looks cool, but it was hard to read in a detailed comic, and in like a pinup like this it was fine, but not with full detail backgrounds. So anyway, this is, you can tell there, if I show you the next page, it is kind of a reuse of that. Slight difference. Charlotte's waking up here. Later on, I do make the credits page a fully unique page that's part of the story. But for now, this starts just inside their Lancer. They have a little crew cabin, sort of a bomber-sized aircraft, but given their migratory nature, they need to be able to live out of it too, so it's a bit of a Lone Star sort of flying Winnebago situation. Wing Commander Privateer was also an inspiration for that, so even the Centurion fighter had a big cabin. So anyway, they wake up here, and we get an important plot shot. Pay close attention to that. It's a lot of relevance. And then out in the hangar, this was something I did end up modeling the hangar just for 3D modeling, just for a reference of the perspective, but I didn't really detail anything, so I spent a while redoing details of what the catwalk in the hangar looked like, and stuff like that. The Lancers have more detailed models, though, because I have to draw them a lot. So I also ended up having to redo this a bunch just because the placement of all of them in the hangar was a lot to consider, so sometimes the shots weren't quite right, and I try to be as accurate as possible with the placement of objects in a 3D space and not take too many shortcuts. If I have to, draw a bunch of stuff in the background because that's where it would be, then so be it. And also, like, Bill's grill here and stuff, I just freehanded all that. And the marketplace was a lot of fun. This was one of the first high detail scenes I did, and I like doing these big splash panels with a lot going on. And this shows a little bit more of the civilian side of the Avania setting, because most of it's focused around military, or in the Blackliner's case, mercenary units, so you don't see as much of the civilian stuff since they're always on a base or doing their mission. But anyway, we have early cameo by one of my favorite characters, if you watch my art, Victoria. But she doesn't have a big role just yet. But you do get to see she's with Leon, the police inspector, special police inspector, as they're doing their villainous business, beating up innocent security guards. And so here Charlotte gets captured, and then they conveniently come back to the hangar and got another big detailed, this time mainly just focusing on the characters, but I like this shot too. Drawing a lot of characters is kind of an ever-present thing with this series, both because I just have a lot of characters and because it's a military setting, so there's just a lot of personnel present most of the time. And they have a bit of an argument. Una and Charlotte share a pretty close connection, so they non-verbally communicate to each other. And Charlotte starts the fight by stamping on this goon's foot, and then Una charges in, backed up by some of the other Black Lanterns. And this was probably one of the densest pages I've ever done. Just a lot of characters on screen, a lot of action. Originally, I didn't have the knockout background for that center 2 panels, and it was just too much. You couldn't see a lot of what's going on, so there's a lot of knockout. Same with this. I just knocked out the panel gutters entirely there, and I think it really helps. I need to think about doing that more, because I do tend to have a lot of dense stuff, and it reduces the workload of having to draw that many detailed backgrounds, but I think the contrast of the detailed backgrounds with grades and stuff turns out nicely when you have these punched out sections that just focus on the character, and especially for action, something happening quickly, you're not looking at background details. So I've since improved from this page, but I think it still stands out as one I put a lot of work in, and went back and made some edits, like Una's arm position and some of the details here, mainly for continuity, but some just to, if I put this much work into it, I might as well polish it up to make it as readable and as, just as best as it can be for the time. And then this one, the text a little bit cut off. That's one issue with developing this for digital as well as print, is there's a good 1/4 inch that gets cut off, so you'll see a little bit more on the digital versions of these pages than you will on here with the full bleed stuff. So usually I try to make sure the text is fully within the cut line. This one, I might have just forgot to move it back down again, but not too big of a deal. It's just the sound effects. Surprisingly, no one commented on the Freeport security chief lighting off a burst inside. I guess he's pointed out toward the open sky, but still, that would be loud as heck, and I'd be worried about ricochets shooting inside a giant metal environment. And then they have a little reunion and have a little discussion of the aftermath. And this was something I changed up a bit. I started doing a little more shading with the directional lighting and giving them a little more 3-dimensional volume. via the shading, since originally I just put tones on everything basically, and it works alright, but it looks a lot nicer. And so that was one thing I did when I went back and kind of remastered the pages, was give everybody a little more directional lighting, which is even more prominent in recent pages, but I think it helps on these older ones too. And also, I talked about this on the last page of the first issue. This felt like sort of a watershed, or setting a bar for the inking quality. They're fairly large. Scarlet and Harry are fairly large in the frame here, so they have quite clean and fairly detailed, like really crisp looking line art. So that was something I wanted to continue. And obviously, with this many characters in a more distant shot, the line art, it's detailed, but it's a little more simple. But this, like, I really liked how they came out here, so I trended toward cleaner line art. You can see there's a lot of scuffs, especially on Una, because it's scuffier in general. But now we go to the frontier, and we got two whole big establishing shots of sorts here, or an establishing shot and just sort of a larger environmental shot, establishing Hans's relationship with Breckenridge, and they're pretty much polar opposites as far as how they like to do things. But I like these shots, and you show the engineers working in the background, and Hans being angsty. And this is something I had planned too, Rick fooling around with the friggin' dynamite. And then Hans goes for one of his introspective conversations with Schmidt. Rick fools around with explosives, and Rick does what he does best, and provokes a fight, and immediately gets punched in the face. So this was both a close-up action shot and a kind of detailed background shot, because we had a bunch of space there that you can see the train platform at Frontier HQ. And then this, again, I went back to the punched out background, focus on that, which I think looked really cool in this, especially with their legs and, you know, just their general bodies overlapping each other. This is technically like 3 panels of action, but I thought it looked really neat having them kind of woven together as Rick is dodging and weaving around Max's punches. But then, with a little bit of focus on that, then the attention sort of shifts to the crowd around the fight, as despite being the senior NCO, Hartwin's perfectly happy to cheer Rick on in the boxing match, until Hans and Schmidt come up on the scene and have to restore a bit of order. Basically telling Hartwin to do his job, which he can do when reminded. Out of focus again. And then to finish this off, Breckenridge comes up, acts like Breckenridge for a while, and sets the stage for the next issue by assigning Max and Rick punishment detail. And then, meanwhile, Valenvarius and Eisern have reached Frontier HQ. And this was the first time I'd drawn them in, like 40 pages, so they had a big jump in art quality, and again, sort of set the bar for how detailed I wanted them to appear, and especially with their fancy outfits. Spent plenty of time making sure everything looked nice. Like Valenvarius' sword here, I had to detail that out. He has a fancy rapier, so that was something I had to get down in my head of how to draw consistently. Fortunately, Eisern's sword is a much simpler, more realistic hilt. Well, I guess they're both realistic hilts. Actually, I think Eisern's was probably the less realistic one. He has like a military style swept hilt. And Valenvarius has a much more elaborate fancy pants rapier. And so, this being the second issue, I do 2 chapters of 10 pages each, and it ends up being 20 interior pages plus the credits forming the comic, and then a few extra pages to just kind of fill it out and add a little more flavor to the overall issue. So from the author, I reuse some of my favorite line art, and then a little Avania mail interlude. This is something I run on Tumblr. You can go to worldofavania.com where the webcomic is, and if you want to submit a question, you can. You can do it anonymously, or if you have a Tumblr account, you can do it through that. Either one's fine. And this comic happened to fit just in the whole page, but a lot of times they're a big, long, scrolly comic, or sometimes they're just a single panel. Depends on the question and who and how it's answered. So that's just a little bonus thing. I have like 60, almost 70 of these little question and answer things, so that just adds a little more detail to the characters, and sometimes it's a question about the world or the technology or whatever. And this is just straight up an advertisement, but I kind of like somewhat in-universe themed advertisements. You can go check out the Avania PX, which is my merch store, and you can buy posters or stickers or little Avania buttons from there, and yeah, just help support me and my work, and give you something cool to enjoy if you like Avania. And of course, for the back inside cover pin-up here of our 2 villains for the issue, Victoria and Inspector Leon. And this was another one I adjusted a lot. It's probably not the best illustration of Victoria, but the Inspector came out pretty much just as I wanted him. And they definitely accomplished their villainous posing there. And then on the back cover for this time, instead of just one ad, we have a whole page of ads for some of the businesses at Freeport. And this is another in-universe item, like a little flyer that crews and travelers would be able to pick up, just showing some of the businesses on Freeport Station, as well as some of the services offered by Freeport itself. So that is Avania issue number 2, and you can buy this physical issue on IndyPlanet. I'll put the link in the description. And you can download the digital copy of it on ComiXology. The digital copies are a bit cheaper, obviously, because you don't have to factor in printing costs, but the ComiXology and the IndyPlanet one both have all the interior pages, the art, the covers, everything, and the ComiXology ones are DRM free. And you can also just read the pages by themselves on worldofavania.com. And I just hope you enjoy reading it. This is a passion project for me. I just like drawing and coming up with the characters and stories for this setting. So any way you want to enjoy it, if you're enjoying it, that makes me happy. So I hope you are. And if not, hope you learned a little bit. In any case, that's all for now. Thanks. Bye.